why do we do the things we do? Is always such an awkward thing to talk about. And here I am answering why choose morality. So, I'll start this podcast off with a controversial statement. Being moral does not matter. Which is a scary phrase to come across, especially if it were true. Sorry for that little jump scare, but some people do believe that right and wrong are fluid concepts, always changing depending on the situation, the person involved, or the specific circumstances, and hint hint, the moral object, intention, and circumstances. And this leads to the mindset that life is meaningless, and as worded above, our actions do not matter. Everything is seen as morally neutral, and everyone is thinking, oh, it doesn't matter, oh, I don't care. And suddenly phrases like has to and need to are worthless because nobody cares, because nobody has any standards. And suddenly, like a butterfly or domino effect, society crumbles. So, how are we still here? Well, think about it this way. If life is truly meaningless, then living is pointless as well. But life isn't meaningless. We all have something influencing us. We all have something that is subtly influencing our actions. We all are moral. Being moral means to be able to make your own judgment. And don't tell me you haven't judged that one new kid or the snobby cashier that's working overtime. Even judging that life is meaningless is a choice. So why be moral? Well, to understand why, let's go over the 4 levels of happiness. The first level of happiness is laetus, which is a short-lived happiness in things. This happiness is not internal and is based on external objects, which when the object disappears, our happiness dies along with it. Laetus can be like, this chip here, and I'm happy that I have this chip. But now, it's gone, and so was my short spurt of happiness. Next is Felix, comparative happiness. This is controversial, however, for the reason that if we compare and fail, it can lead to unhappiness and worthlessness. And as explained before, this happiness is found in others' misery. For example, I got a 98 on my science test, and now I can experience Felix. Let's call a friend. What did you get on your science test?
100.
Anyway, next is beatitudo, which literally stands for happiness or blessedness. This is the happiness from seeing good in others or doing good for them. This is the opposite of Felix, because instead of comparing, you're combining. But like laetus, this happiness is limited, because if the person you've linked your happiness to dies, the happiness dies along with it. And finally, we have sublime beatitudo. And we know what beatitudo means, but what about sublime? Instead of majestic or fantastic, sublime literally means to lift up or elevate. And that's what sublime beatitudo is, an elevated form or a perfection of happiness. This happiness is a sense of warmfulness and an internal sense of contentment. This happiness is hardest to describe as it is divine, meaning above earthly obstacles, and requires either someone else or another spiritual power to achieve. But how does this link to morality? Well, to be moral is to be honest, empathetic, and respectful, and all these factors lead to trust. Trust then builds healthy relationships in family and friends, which is a requirement for higher levels of happiness, such as beatitudo or sublime beatitudo, especially when we can become more Christ-like and build an even bigger bond with God. Another reason to be moral is that it contributes to the greater good itself. Morality acts like laws, but unwritten. If we all start to be moral and slowly raise a population to unknowingly grow and be raised in this society with good morals, it would slowly become second nature for a just society. Now, let's view this from another point of view. Through the story, The Ring of Gyges, Plato tells the tale of a man, or Gyges, who finds a powerful ring able to make him invisible at will. Here, he is able to do various multiple acts without any consequences, as nobody could see him and therefore hold him accountable. Swaying the queen, slaying the king, stealing the kingdom, anything to his desire. But how does this help with my case of why choose morality? Well, morality isn't about if you're caught or not. Rather, it's tied to, in this case, Jarji's character and soul. And don't get me wrong, there is no person who wouldn't abuse such power, and even if they didn't, would be secretly thought of as an idiot for wasting their immense power. Secretly, of course, because they feared they would suffer consequences otherwise. So, what if you had everything? Like the famous saying, money does not buy happiness. What is there to yearn for when there's nothing left? In the levels of happiness, the highest you can amount to is Felix, because you're comparing yourself to others because of everything you have. You can't achieve Beatitudo because you're using people instead of celebrating with them. And with all these immoral acts, you've corrupted your soul and lost your moral compass. By being moral, you can use the ring for the benefit of your society and therefore be happy because of the happiness of others. There and only there can you reach the higher levels of happiness. One last reason to be moral is because, well, it's the right thing to do. It aligns with the basic principles of justice, fairness, and goodness. Being moral is just about doing what is right, regardless of consequences or personal benefit. Being moral benefits both you and society and can help create stronger relationships. All these reasons help you become more Christ-like and therefore become more like the people God created us to be. But, of course, life isn't just a Dora adventure where everything in the end is resolved and where we can celebrate and cheer Lo hicimos. There's always some swiper to take this perfect path away from us. Racism is something that will always plague society, and sadly, you cannot swiper no swiping racism away. It's a stereotype which can be envisioned through bullies. Of course, there are instances where the typical jock from every high school movie exists, but does that imply that all bullies are the same 6-foot football team varsity jacket wearing person? There are always people who are online bullies, or even people who spread rumors. So, if everyone is different, why pinpoint one stereotype for the whole batch? By being moral, we can see that God created us all equally, with equal chance to get into His kingdom. And adding on to being Christ-like, we should all give everyone an equal chance and fairness. Nobody gains anything out of racism, not even happiness, unless Felix is what they're aiming for. Again, they're just comparing themselves with someone else's stereotype that doesn't even exist. Have they met this person? Do they know who they are? So why do they treat them differently? We were all born with equal dignity, and racism is taking it away. We are actively taking away God's creation. How can we reach sublime beatitudo from this? Ultimately, morality can help us become better people, become happier people, and help us enter into His kingdom. And with that, we know why to choose morality. And now I can finally say, Lo hicimos, and thank you for listening to Why Choose Morality. And if you want to learn how to be moral, make sure to visit How Can I Be Moral? Adios.